questions were there that I could answer.
Okay, with that, we will bring it to the commissioners for questions. Who would like to start?
Can I start, Amy?
Yes.
Thank you very much. I want to first say that I'm really excited that you guys are going to do condos. We have a lack of condos, I think, in this city. For some reason, developers seem to be oddly hesitant about condos in Salt Lake. And I'm excited that there's a good set of 2-bedroom units. I'm excited there's going to be some 3-bedroom. I am slightly sympathetic to some of the comments in the Central Ninth's public comment about the facade, and I am also sympathetic to your desire to keep this an affordable project, and I realize that some requests to change this will add to the costs and take it out of that affordable realm by any sort of stretch of what we define as affordable. I don't know how closely you've looked at the public comment from Central Ninth, but can you maybe speak to what they, when they suggested you vary the height, the distance of the setbacks, or add some courtyards? Is that feasible? How much cost are we adding approximately? Can you comment a little bit on their comment?
So by way of cost, that's a little bit above my own pay grade. I don't get into estimating a whole lot in that regard. And I did not see the comment, but what we have done, as Katya mentions, we've got at street level, we've got these 3 separate, in concept anyway, 3 separate buildings. We've tried to align relatively closely with shifts in material, with color, and with regard to the proximity to the street of the condos up against State Street. So in her presentation, she had a kind of building 2 kind of broken up over here. So looking at this is north is to the left on this. So we sort of saw that break to coincide with the south side of this parking drive right here. We broke up the building here, changed material, changed the massing, and then did the same thing. Now again, so even this portion here, this yellow portion of the building, it's already set back from the face of this building at the street level. And then as you move further south, again, you're now at, let's call it building 2 at the street level. This portion of the residential above sets back even further. And that's the large courtyard that Mike was mentioning, where you'll have a lot of common amenities for the tenants. And that'll be a really, really nice kind of urban feel to that place. And then as we continue to move south, then we jump into building 3, the level, the base, if you will, of level 3, of building 3. And then again, this now comes back towards the street a little bit, back towards State Street, with a little bit of a kind of a movement back, again, to give a little bit more separation between, call it the upper levels of building 1, 2, and 3.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. So in your unit mix, you have 112 units. By my count, you have 23 2-bedrooms, 58 1-bedrooms, and 31 studios. So you actually don't have 3 bedrooms on the plans at all. And am I wrong here? And also you have studios, which you didn't mention. I mean, it was not mentioned. So I'm sort of wanting to recalculate the parking requirements, because it looks to me like you have a lot more parking than you actually are allowed to have. I don't see a chart where that's been calculated.
So the unit mix does seem to be somewhat in flux. Mike and I have been working on that, trying to figure out the best way to handle, that balance between the right number of units, the right size of units, the right bedroom count, and so forth. So that we are kind of working through. So Katya, I wonder if I could punt back to you a little bit. If you could explain, because we were quite frankly a little confused with regard to the parking requirement for this FBU N2 zone. There is a minimum requirement, which was 0, and then the maximum requirement referred back to the minimum requirement with regard to parking. So what we did end up doing, we have on, or I have rather, on my cover sheet, a breakdown of all those stalls as they're, as we've provided them, as the different uses are going to be required. So this is how we've broken it up. For a studio, we have a half stall per unit. For a single 1-bedroom, a single stall, and then for a 2-bedroom, 2 stalls. And then we have the commercial spaces that are according to the chart in the zoning ordinance for this zone.
But those are kind of the maximum parking requirements. And if you're really trying to do something that's affordable, that's a place where you can really save a lot of money because all of your parking is structured as far as I can see. Is that
Agreed.
correct?
Pretty close, yeah, 90% of it.
So, I mean, it is a lot of parking in a place that's fairly urban, that's supposed to be, an urban zone where people would not necessarily have 2 parking spaces. It's certainly not just for a 2-bedroom unit. So, I think you're way over parked on this one. And that may be a way for you to really save a lot of money and even maybe, I don't know, maybe the underground parking doesn't even need to be built. So, it seems like this is a little bit not worked out, both from the standpoint of the facade, which I can see, the separation happening on the ground floor. I think that's happening on the ground floor. I'd like to see it reflect, and it's somewhat carried up. I think it's carried up through the architectural facade distinguishing materials on the second floor, and that's okay. But I think some of the comments that the neighborhood council had really need to be taken to heart. And I don't know what I can't tell from your drawings what the height of the ground floor is. So do you have, there's sort of in your elevation, what is the height of the ground floor? Because
So
that was one of their comments, and I agree that a generous ground floor makes a huge difference in the way the whole thing is worked out. I see.
yeah, agreed. So obviously we've talked about this Parley's Canyon clearance. So that's really kind of the driving force behind a nice high second level. So right now we're at 18 feet. That should give us enough once we get our structure in
Yeah.
there to have that 16-foot clearance at the drive, and
Okay.
great retail space on that street side.
Okay, that's good. No, 16 is fine. That's good.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. So, but the issue with the parking is still, I mean, the whole idea of our new parking ordinance and every other thing is that we don't over park. We don't have more parking than we really need to have.
So if I recall, and like I said, I'd be curious to hear back from Katya again, because just the way the zoning ordinance with this FBUN2 is written, there is no maximum parking. It refers simply back to the minimum parking table required, and the minimum was 0. So what we ended up doing, I believe, we went to a similar or an adjacent zone that did have a maximum parking, and used those standards as our guideline, because the FBUN2 just is
I'm pretty sure FBUN2 has a maximum. So Katya, maybe, or someone else, maybe, Kelsey, you can answer that.
Yeah, I can jump in real quick. So you are correct that there's no minimum required in the FBUN2 specifically. In that table for zone specific, FBUN2 does not require any parking. However, if you refer to the minimum off-street parking requirements per use, that's where you would calculate your parking. So based on how many dwelling units, square footage of restaurant and retail space. So we would break it down per use, which is what Ryan has done on this cover sheet.
Does that mean that the minimum for that use is the maximum for that zone?
What we used for the maximum is the requirement for each land use. So for each land use, there's in the parking chapter, there is you know, for residential, there's a required parking for retail, for restaurants. So we used that number and calculated the maximum
Yeah.
parking.
So the minimum for that land use turns into the maximum when you're in this walkable
I,
zoning.
is
Does that not sound right?
that doesn't sound right to me. I mean, what's the point of having a zero requirement if you don't have zero requirement? If you actually have to build, you know, all of this parking.
Well, Commissioner, I don't think it's a zero requirement. It's an allowance to provide zero parking.
Right.
And
So why
admittedly,
do
it's
we have
confusing.
all these, why do we have this calculation when, you know, so you're saying that this is the maximum? They've taken the maximum here and made it what they're building?
Yeah, I would say it's as close to the maximum as you can get. And certainly they have to follow those regulations. I mean, we're not going to let them build more parking. And you're right that we want to encourage less parking. I completely agree with you on everything you said. Thankfully, this will be a lot more clear when the council adopts our updated parking regulations from what we currently have, and that you, I believe, reviewed, I don't know, a year and a half ago, 2 years ago.
Yes, we did.
So and so it is confusing, and I get that. But yes, we have determined that basically the minimum parking becomes the maximum. And so if not, we basically saying you can't put any parking in at all. If we said the maximum is the minimum, which is zero, we would be saying you can't put even one parking stall in. And I don't think that that is necessarily reasonable either. And so this is what we took when we interpreted this section of the code. So hopefully it will get better and easier.
Okay, thanks, John.
Thanks, John.
Any other questions from commissioners?
I wonder that that existing office building that's going to be demolished, how long is it?
It's pretty
That's
long.
a good question. I know it's over that 200 feet. If we can get a.
Oh, I see.
Is it really divided like that, or are those just stairways? Those are just stairways,
Those are,
right?
yeah, these are interior stairways. It's one contiguous building. These are really just circulation, pedestrian circulation, but that's, I mean, and it's got the same kind of thing. You drive underneath the building. So really, I mean, we're a little bit longer than what's there existing, but honestly, by the time really, the only thing we're adding really that's different from what there is kind of this open spot right here, this open asphalt here.
Well, it's certainly, if you're walking on that street, it's different to have a big parking lot and then a shorter building that's long than a tall building that's right at the sidewalk that is long, right? So it's, I mean,
Sure.
I think it's a big difference, but that is already a pretty long building right there.
Right.
Commissioner Burrows, I measured it, and this is going to be an approximate, but it's about 425 feet.
That's pretty long.
That's pretty long.
So I also have a question about your setback, your 23-foot setback on the corner. It's a narrow sidewalk there, true. But how did you come up with 23 feet? I mean, if you increase the sidewalk to say 15 feet, even.
Yeah, so there's good sized distribution lines with Rocky Mountain Power already on the site. They actually, if I remember right, if they don't already hang over the existing roof of the Coachman's restaurant, they're very, very close to it. So as we started looking at that with new construction, there's two big concerns. One is undermining the foundations for those power lines. But then there are also, because there are distribution and transmission lines there, there's also Rocky Mountain Power requirements as to how close you can be with a built structure to those power lines. So if you can consider a 5-story building that has to need, that the exterior windows need to be cleaned, somebody's got to get out on the roof, come down over the edge and clean those windows from the roof. They can only be within a certain distance, or they can only come as, you know, a certain amount, a certain distance to those power lines. And so a lot of it is a function of the location of the power lines, how wide those power lines are, and then the setbacks from those power lines, the outer reach of those power lines.
Okay, thank you.
So I just had a simple question, I guess. Has UDOT approved where your curb cuts are? And
So
your
we're
entrances?
Yeah, with regard to the curb cut, that's a great question. I don't know. Actually, Mike, maybe I'll punt to you on that one. I'm not sure if we've finalized our UDOT conversations or not.
'Cause another project had a similar problem with UDOT of where they could put a space into their building.
Yeah.
Am I able to talk? Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I wasn't sure if I was muted. So those are currently where the curb cuts are right now. The one is for Coachman's, and then the further south one is for the plaza. However, with the culvert there and everything involved, I thought it would be so much better just to bring traffic in one way and out and widen it there. So the only thing we would be requesting of UDOT, and we haven't gotten to that just because we need to know what we need to do, with this step right now before we can move forward. So basically, all we're doing is widening it and making it directional. When you're coming from the south to the north, you'd come in right away, and then obviously you can see the arrows where when you're leaving the property, you would directional as well. So it I think really cleans things up, and you've got much better vision of the street when you do that, of your oncoming traffic and pedestrians and everything. I mean, it's just a huge difference when you do things like that. Anyway, and then I would, okay, that's fine. I'll let go.
I hope UDOT shares your vision.
I do too.
Yes, we all do. Thank you.
Anybody else before I?
I had one quick question. Just what are the projected sidewalk widths along State Street?
I believe the sidewalks are in effect, at least along State Street, are in effect about what they are right now. We're coming again because we have a zero lot line. We're zero lot line. We're coming up to the back of sidewalk with a fair portion of, I guess maybe portions of our building. We've recessed some of the entrances for the commercial space, but I mean it's 5-6 feet, give or take.
That's not very much.
Yeah.
But that's to the property line. Again, I mean, we've got a zero setback we're having to maintain.
But that's not counting the strip between there, is it?
Right. It's not counting. Right. Exactly. That's not counting the landscape strips. Just
It's
the width
actually
of the
more like
sidewalk
about
alone.
maybe 12 feet, 10 to 12.
Yeah, from the curb to the lot. Yeah.
So I want to just say that I'm really concerned about the length of this building. When I look back on our discussions of other projects that exceeded the length, this is the longest building I have a memory of us ever discussing. We've approved some similar type design where you had an entrance, a vehicle entrance that broke it up, but that building was like 250, 280 feet long. This is double that. And I'd like to hear what other ideas have you had to actually break these up into maybe even 2 different buildings, so this is not 550 plus feet.
Yeah, that's a fair question. The tough part is when you get into the buildings like this, egress. So you have different building systems, mechanical systems, and plumbing systems, and it really becomes a question of egress. How do you get people out of the building without having 20 different stairwells? And that was kind of really what drove a lot of this. And we've talked about different methods or techniques of design that could help reinforce the fact that we're trying to, reinforce the notion that these are 3 separate buildings. For now, we've kept it relatively simple with changes in materials and colors and recesses and so forth. We felt it was a pretty effective method of breaking these buildings up. And again, the big concern, at least all that we've talked about with the planning staff, has been the pedestrian experience. And so from that perspective, having broken this up into quote unquote 3 buildings really is achieving, in our minds, is achieving that breakup.
Okay.
So if I can comment on that for just a moment, I mean, the whole, you come up with a plan and an objective, and my objective is to provide condos. And by the way, ma'am, to address you, it was 40-60, I mean, 40-50 with some studios to take up the rest of the space that I had commented on. And we are working on that, just to address that question that was never really answered earlier. But the whole idea here is to create a project that people can come in and buy literally 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom, and a few studios. There's not going to be many, approximately 6 to 8 is all I'm looking at, and still make it affordable, which means I'm going to give them a product between $275 up to $450. Okay. And that's what I'm trying to achieve. This, I can achieve it. If I do change it, it's going to be, it would be drastically different. And I think this is aesthetically beautiful and would be a wonderful place for people to, I mean, you're just so close to the city, and you're so close to Salt Lake Community College, the University, Westminster College, everywhere. Trax is just down the road. I mean, it makes it the ballpark, Liberty Park. I mean, this would be a wonderful starter home. And that was my whole objective in trying to create this project that will give people an opportunity to do it. I mean, if anybody ate at Coachman's, our mantra was to give you the best for the least price possible. And literally, that's what I'm trying to achieve with this whole thing. So I'm not trying to usurp anything. We're trying to make it work under those parameters.
Mike, can I?
Yeah, let me just wrap up, and then we're gonna go to the public comment period, because we'll cycle back to us after that. I will just say that I appreciate your objectives, but my view on these type of things has always been, as a city, we get one shot at this parcel in our given lifetimes, and so paying attention to the type of product that we end up building is important to me, and I'm not convinced 550 some feet of a continuous building is what we want to see there, but that we'll continue to discuss that afterward. So commissioners, I'm going to just conclude this part, but if you have other questions, hold them for when we come back after the public comment period, and we can ask more questions and have more of a wrap-up discussion. So if you are here for the public comments, just another brief reminder of how to participate. In the lower right-hand corner of your screen is a hand. It looks like that. You'll need to select that to raise it. Let us know that you wish to speak. When you're done speaking, if you would click that hand again, it unraises it and it allows us to process or to manage who's speaking better. You will have 2 minutes to speak, and given how many people want to speak, I will be pretty strict on that. And then please also state your name for the record at the beginning. This is a public comment period. It's not a back and forth Q&A. However, the 2 minutes are yours. If you wish to ask questions, I will be writing them down. After the public comment period, I will pose them to the appropriate person, whether it's staff or applicant. But we won't stop the public comment period for a back and forth Q&A, but don't let that stop you from asking any questions you may have. Okay, Kelsey, you are up in terms of, I'm going to open the public comment period.
Okay.
And
there are no hands raised at this time.
Hey, Kelsey, I'm looking at Dr. Anderson and there's a check mark. I don't see a hand, but we may want to ask and see if he or she would like to speak.
I will. I actually just saw a Robert Smith. Your hand is raised. Let me unmute you. All right, Robert, you are unmuted.
So I was just gonna say on this building, because the top portion is kind of set back, almost look like it's a different building, from the street level. The condos aren't, it's not it's not a continuous facade that goes all the way up 5 stories. It's as if there's a, you know, retail, whatever, and then in the background there's condos. So I mean, it's kind of broken up that way as well. Seems like, you know, from a aesthetic perspective.
Okay, he already went away. So that was Robert Smith for the record. And then, yeah, I can see a check mark for Dr. Anderson. If you could check with him and see if they want to comment.
Hey, Dr.
can you hear me?
Anderson? Yes, we can hear you.
Sorry, those were the only, I was getting a weird set of options for the hand raising thing.
No
That's what I
worries.
was. And I'm not a doctor either. I don't know why I typed that in, but it's a nickname. So sorry. My name's Taylor Anderson, and I guess I wanted to reiterate. I know it's a UDOT issue. The sidewalks on the, I guess, the west side here. When I'm measuring from Google, and I'm maybe one of the few people that willingly walks this stretch. I live near here, and the idea of walking between a building that's built, a very long building that's built up to the lot line, and then it's only 7 feet between, including sidewalk and median, and that's approximately, but about 7 to 8 feet total between a turning lane on State Street, US 89. It just seems unpleasant. I know that that's their right. That's the FBUN2 has been approved already, and this is what's being allowed. But I wonder if we're doing the same on the north end of the building, if it's a consideration the developer could make to widen that a little bit or to improve the pedestrian experience on the west side of the building. So it's more, I guess, a question or a thought or a piece of feedback, however you want to take it. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Taylor. I don't see any other hands raised, but we'll give it a moment. If you want to speak on this item, go ahead and click your hand. At the bottom right, John, have you received any emails?
The only email we received was from the Central Ninth Community Council, and it was a little after 5. I can read it into the record, but if you guys should already have it, that's up to
We
you.
did, but considering that it was a little bit after 5 p.m., I think it's the Community Council, I think it's prudent that you go ahead and read it into the record, please.
Okay, yeah, I'm happy to do that. Let me pull it up for you. All right, it says the Community Council is generally supportive of a new high-quality building that will bring new housing and businesses to our neighborhood. However, we have reservations about a building of its length with an uninterrupted facade built right up to either the setback or property line. An important urban design principle is that the building's fronting sidewalk should offer variety and interest for pedestrians. This building is missing the opportunity to offer some planted open space to allow pedestrians a chance to step off the sidewalk at reasonable intervals. In Salt Lake City's overly long block faces, this is even more crucial. As nice as this building appears for the pedestrian walking along it, the experience is likely to be relentless. There may be things and activity to look at through the window, but there also may not be. There is no way to guarantee the storefronts will be actively used. From an urban design and walkability perspective, the best thing to do on a building of this scale is to break the building facade up into separate masses or vary the setback to the front facade. One way to do this is by introducing 1 or 2 courtyards at the sidewalk that allow the public to interact with the space and offer an amenity. There are also useful amenities for the ground level commercial spaces. This open space can be used by the public even though it is on private property and allows the opportunity to introduce trees and vegetation. Building facade design also impacts the way cars move along the street. When buildings are designed with an uninterrupted facade like this, it raises the perceived design speed of a road and makes the street more comfortable to drive at higher speeds. Changes in height, form, increased pedestrian activity, increased tree canopy, all work together to lower traffic speed and make streets more sticky, which is a good thing for neighborhoods. Another design concern is the ceiling height of the first floor commercial space. We have a vested interest in seeing these commercial spaces be active and successful, and through experience have found that spaces with low ceilings don't do well and have trouble attracting and retaining good businesses. When buildings get taller and larger, the stakes go up. To offset the possible impacts of the building on the streetscape, we need to insist that the building contributes more to the public realm. We need to begin insisting that when a developer is seeking relief from requirements, that they offer something in return, a quote, gift to the street. We would ask that this applicant go back to the drawing board and find some ways to be a better neighbor and set a better urban design pattern for future projects. Going forward, we ask that the planning department implement a strategy to make it part of granting requests like this, that the higher urban design standards are required and variances are granted. With regards, Central Ninth Community Council.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, and we didn't receive any further emails from them.
No other emails. I see no other hands raised. So with that, I will close the public comment hearing and bring it back to the commission. First up, I allow the applicant to address Taylor Anderson's thought / question of increasing the pedestrian pleasantness experience on the west side, given the sidewalk width. You
So-
wanted to just make some comments on that?
Yeah, so the way the FBUN2 zone is written, and I don't remember exactly the requirements, but there's a portion of the building is required to have a zero lot line. So portions of these buildings have to be up against that back of curb. And again, I don't remember exactly what the parameters were as to how much of the building had to be that close, but you know, we've recessed portions of this building for those building entrances, for the commercial, for the housing and lobby area. We've actually recessed some of those. We actually had some of them even deeper than what we show right now. And as part of the staff review prior to this meeting, we had to bring those closer to the street in order to be in compliance with the zoning ordinance.
Okay, thank you. All right, commissioners, this is our time to do a discussion. Any further questions for staff or applicant, and talk about the project and then do an action.
It's Andra here. I am wondering, question for Mike and Ryan, what research was done? I'm still concerned about the volume of studio units and that we are building in this city, and particularly like what does the ACS show in terms of the growth of single person households in Salt Lake City relative to the number of permits that are being approved for studio, because the only people that are going to occupy a studio are one person households. And so what is the sort of numbers we have on demographics relative to the number of units approved?
So, do you want me to address that, Ryan, or do you want to?
Yeah, I don't get into those analytics.
All right, because I was going to say I did a lot of analysis through different real estate and a whole bunch of different people. I don't have them in front of me right this very minute, but I can tell you that that's why my count of studios is literally going to be somewhere around 8, and literally I don't want more than that. My thought behind that is that there may be people from out of state that would be attending school that may or may not have or want to own a studio. And I literally am not going to let that number exceed 8. And Ryan knows that I've been pushing him so that we can get together, but we've been trying to put the material together for this here. Anyway, that we want to redo that count. That count is not accurate. That's from a previous architect that I had. And we've just been basically working with so many other obstacles that we haven't got to that count yet, because we don't even know if we can do this project yet. But my ideal is somewhere around 40 single bedroom, 50 2 bedroom, anywhere from 4 to 5 3 bedroom, and the remainder to be sucked up by the studios, just to take up the space so that, you know, we can utilize the space well. We've seen, we did, you know, and also to let you all know, condos are really tough to do analysis on because there's not a lot of them around. It's all just rentals. So we had to go a little bit outside of our you know, certain circle to find some of this information. And then some of it didn't apply because it was too expensive, and it doesn't apply to what I'm going to do. You know, when you get to Gateway and when you get to all those things, that doesn't apply. Those numbers are not the same as that would apply to this project. So we did a lot, and my study is that this is what's needed. I obviously am banking on it, you know, otherwise I wouldn't be pushing forward for this project. And then, you know, the gentleman that from the council that addressed that, you know, first level, he wants good retail places there. We've got 16-foot, you know, that first level for retail. That's going to attract some fantastic people. I want to put like a little grocery store. I want to find, you know, like a Harmon's type in Holiday right there on that corner. I think that would be fantastic. And then I'm looking at doing things that will, you know, one will help the other, where you've got maybe an insurance company, maybe a really neat salon, maybe what do you call it? Just a lot of little things that will, the tenants will help the retail, and the retail will love to have those tenants above them as customers. And with 16-foot ceilings and what we plan on doing there, we're going to attract some good ones. Like a Verizon would go well there. Things like this. You know what I mean?
Thanks very much for that clarification. I was confused, but thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioners, any further discussions?
Well, I want to recognize what Brenda was saying about the other plan development that we looked at. Like the amount of information we have on this one is significantly different than the other plan development we looked at. So maybe, I don't know, maybe there's a different way to split lots or something like that. Is this building big enough that it's going to have to go through design review? That was 20,000 square feet that you have to.
Gotcha.
No, the only reason for the plan development is the 2 modification.
Which is the
How
setback
big
and
is
the
this
length of
building?
the building. In square footage?
Yeah.
Let me,
I thought design review is required for 20,000 square feet, right?
It depends on the zone.
Yeah, Commissioner Burrows, while Kutch is looking for that, different zones have different thresholds which would trigger a design review. So for example, in the Sugar House Business District, it is 20,000 square feet. If you're in a community business or CD zone, it's actually 7,500 square feet. The FEU and UA2 does not ever require you going through design review if you meet all of the zoning regulations. We're here because they're asking for modifications through the plan development process.
So I have
okay. I have a lot of questions and comments here.
let me get this one in
Go
really
ahead.
quick. So
Sure.
I think this is more for Kelsey as acting director. So whenever a project gets, say, approved by the planning commission, and then it's up to the director to decide if modifications are major enough to bring back to us. I'm concerned about also not having UDOT approval that could significantly modify the entrances and exits, because UDOT is UDOT and they're going to do whatever they want to do. That where is the threshold? Because if this gets approved at 550 some feet long, there could be some serious modifications. What would trigger that to come back, do you think, as a major modification, given what could happen?
Well, if the UDOT chooses to not approve the curb cuts in the proposed locations and it alters the building, that would be considered a major modification. The minor modifications are fairly minimal, and they keep to like technical issues with fire or engineering concerns, as well as like location of accessory structures, landscape buffers, final grade, and then location of open space. There are some, let's see, Justin, yeah, that wouldn't really be a minor modification, especially if it impacted like parking, vehicular access and circulation on the interior of the site, because the building is so long that would impact the full facade.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
So I think actually this from my perspective, this project is not ready for prime time. Number one, we have a unit mix that would suggest that the building is going to be a lot bigger than it actually is. If you have more 3 bedrooms and more 2 bedrooms, and substituting for a lot more 1 bed.
Brenda, you are getting choppy and freezing up. And
okay, I'm saying that the applicant is talking about changing the unit mix significantly, that from what they have actually in the drawings. And when you look at the units in the drawings, there isn't room on that building floor plate to make a lot more 3-bedroom units and a lot more 2-bedroom units and a lot fewer studio units. So there will have to be some significant changes to this building in order to meet those unit mixes that the applicant is talking about. I think the issue of the curb cuts and the state will have a tremendous effect. I can't imagine them allowing 2 curb cuts like that next to each other, and when they do that, and that may not even be desirable. I do think that it is too long, and there is, you not only is the building too long, but it's also got one elevator, as far as I can see.
2 elevators.
2 elevators. Okay, if it has 2 elevators already, then it's not that hard for you to add another staircase and have essentially 2 buildings where you have one long one. So I think this building really needs a little bit of a rework from the design perspective. Kati had talked in the beginning about trying to break up the facade itself more. And I think that at the very least, you could create more of a courtyard effect, so that maybe it's still all one building, but at least it looks a little bit more like 2 buildings or 3 buildings from the street level, which means you would have to break that second level facade. Excuse me, the second floor.
Look, we lost Brenda.
So,
Madam Chair,
yeah,
can I make a suggestion
yes.
that we table this? And he said they changed architects and things, and let them redo their plans and, in Brenda's words, finish it, make it ready for, comply with what they want to do.
If you would like to make a motion, please go ahead,
But-
and we'll see where that lands.
If I can just ask one question, the only changes we were going to make were internally on that top footprint of the 3 floors, and that was the mix. And also, there was 120, I think, units on that original drawing. I'm dropping it down to 100 to 105 units.
Okay.
So when you say that it won't fit in there, I understand, but that's what we're working on, and we are aware of that.
Okay, thank you.
And I can appreciate that. So I'm going to make a move to table this to allow the applicant to finish some of their detail work.
Would you also, I think it would be helpful for staff if you kind of bullet pointed the specific things so that there's no confusion of maybe the discussion of the commissioners.
I think to make clear what their housing mix is going to be, I think they should have their UDOT approval for that, because that could be a big change.
Will you go ahead and make a motion and then just kind of add those as points so that staff is and the applicant is clear about what we're wanting them to
Okay.
address?
I'll make a
Come
motion.
back again and
Could
then
I,
they hadn't done it. So go ahead, Maureen.
as part of that, would it be possible to make a motion to approve the other items that we've requested so that we can kind of leave those untouched?
We will.
We aren't approving or disapproving. It would be a motion to table it.
Yeah, so we're going to go ahead. The commission is now going to move forward with whatever actions we take. And go ahead, Maureen. We'll start with that.
I'll make a motion to table this item to allow the applicant time to address and update the unit mix. I think and have their UDOT approval. Give them time to look at additional changes in the facade that make it more pedestrian friendly.
Okay. Do I have a second for that?
I'll second, but I'd like to add a little bit of a comment if I can.
Go ahead.
Yes.
So I think to help clarify some of the things that I think we're thinking, and people can correct me if I'm wrong, I'm personally okay with the overall length of the building, but it's breaking it into a feeling of 3 different buildings. And I think if you treat each one of those retail spaces with slightly different architecture, different material palettes, and then above that, follow that up the building, instead of having the little tiny buildings on the top, break that into 3 sections that feel like 3 different buildings. I think that would really help. I think your argument, the massing, I think is headed in the right direction. It's the use of the materials, the amount of glass on the first floor, and the articulation of the architecture. That's just my thought. But yes, I'll second the tabling.
Okay, so I have a motion from Maureen and a second from John. I don't feel like your articulation was anything necessarily different. It was just an elaboration. So I don't think you need a
I
friendly
think it's-
amendment.
I appreciate his suggestions.
Yes.
Can I make a friendly suggestion too?
Yes,
called
this
it
is
that
going
before,
to
so that's
discuss
what I
the
wanted to do.
motion. Go ahead.
So
Amy.
I think maybe they should investigate splitting it actually into two different buildings. So they're, because this is so far out of the range of what's allowed by right, that maybe they should investigate more splitting it into two
Okay.
buildings so they're closer.
I think that is, again, not necessarily necessary to do a friendly amendment for that, but I think those are helpful things for staff to hear if this motion passes, that they can further discuss with the applicant. So I think the
I would
motion
also-
still covers that as well.
I would also like to comment that I don't think we're going to have a big problem with the 23-foot setback. I can't say for sure, but that is not one of the issues which concerns me at this point. So that's just a comment as well.
Agree with that too. Okay, I agree with that as well. All right, we have a motion from Maureen and a second from John. We're going to go ahead and take a vote on this one and see where we land. Mike,
Yes.
Amy,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Brenda,
Yes.
Andreas,
I will vote yes. And just to comment, I think it's a very nice project as well. But the things that were addressed by Brenda and yourself as well, Madam Chair, I think those were very valid points. So yes.
Okay, thank you, Andreas. Andrea,
I'll vote no, and I want to explain briefly my thinking. I am
Alright.
concerned about forcing this to go back to the architect without some sign that we will accept the building length and the setback, because it adds to the soft construction costs by kind of forcing the applicant to go back and forth. That's my reason for voting no.
okay,
I have approved it.
Maureen. Okay, thank
Yes.
you. Okay. That motion to table and send it back to the applicant to send back to the staff passes from 6-1. And I think the points brought up were pretty clear for staff of what the commission would like to better address in the next time we see this. All right, with that, it's been 2 hours. Let's take a 5-minute break and reconvene at 7:36. John, are you back? No,
Yeah, I'm here.
you are. Okay. And then,
Madam Chair, I'm here, Amy.
okay, good. You were my next one. I was trying to scroll through. So we just have Andreas.
Brenda was back. She just stepped away again.
Okay, well, we need Brenda for our quorum, so at least we'll wait for one of those. Check one more time. Andreas, are you back?
Yes, I am back.
Okay, thank you. All right, we've
Thank
got
you.
everybody back in attendance. Let's go ahead and reconvene the meeting. Moving on to the next agenda item, it is River's Edge at Redwood Design Review and Plan Development at approximately 750 North Redwood Road. It's case number PLN PCM 2021-00606 and PLN PCM 2021-00702. And the planner is David.
Okay, good evening, Madam Chair. I'm going to share my screen presentation. Come on. All right, you should be seeing a presentation now. So
Yep.
This is the River's Edge at Redwood Road Design Review and Plan Development, as you noted, with the application numbers. The project request, it's a proposed multifamily residential development with 82 units housed in 12 individual buildings. This would be located on a 2.27 acre parcel that's currently vacant at 750 North Redwood. The zoning is CB or community business. Design review is required due to the buildings exceeding the total building size limits of the CB zone, which allows for a 7,500 square foot footprint or 15,000 square feet overall. This, with the number of buildings, exceeds that, so it has to go through the design review process. And plan development is required due to buildings that don't have public street frontage. Since this is in the CB zoning district, these are essentially townhome units. Attached single-family type units are not allowed in CB. However, this will be platted as a condominium development with ownership of the individual units, whereas the property will be held in common. So that is allowed as a multifamily development in the CB zoning district. So again, it will be platted as a condominium development, and staff is recommending approval of both applications with conditions. Take you through the site layout. Again, I noted it's a 2.27 acre site. It's an interior property just north of 700 North on the east side of Redwood. It'll have a single driveway coming in about the approximate center of the property that goes to this kind of T, the darker drive or the main drive, and then there'll be individual access drives between the different rows of units. Also note there is some surface parking, and there will be parking in each of the garages for the individual units. Site context, the property is zone CB, and it abuts property to the south that is zone CB all along 700 North. A number of those properties were rezoned from R1 5000 to CB in the last, I would say, 3 years. There were a couple different applications for a variety of properties in this area to be rezoned to CB. This particular lot, again, is vacant. It did have commercial uses at one time. It's been vacant for quite a number of years, and looking through city files, it's kind of been a little bit of a code enforcement problem child with dumping and camping and all sorts of other things going on. So high weeds, things like that. It's surrounded by R1 5000 zoning on Irving Street and Ivy Circle. But to be honest, the property immediately to the north is a condominium development about 3 stories tall. And most of the developments on Ivy Circle and Irving Street are all small scale residential uses, typically fourplexes. So the zoning pattern doesn't match the zoning. So the development pattern doesn't match the underlying zoning. So it is in an area of largely multifamily uses. Again, a little bit of a aerial view looking to the west of the subject property. On the south boundary is a gas station property. And then again, these are the properties on Irving and Ivy that have largely been developed for small scale residential multifamily uses. Standards of review, we looked at the base zoning standards for the CB business zoning district. The design standards in Chapter 21A37, as well as the standards for planned developments and standards for design review. We'll note that a couple things, the parking for the property is 1 space per unit. That's the requirement in the CB district. And 1 space will be provided per unit within the enclosed garage at each unit. And they're also providing a extra 14 surface parking spaces for guest and other parking. As far as buffering goes, and I'll go back to the site plan for a moment, the requirements, since it's an interior lot, they do not have an interior side yard requirement on either the north or south property lines. However, they are providing a 7-foot interior side yard, which is beyond what's required, and landscaping both of those. And then the rear yard, which would be on the east side of the development, there's a 10-foot rear yard requirement with a 7-foot landscaping buffer, and they are meeting that. They're also providing a 6-foot fence around the site for some additional buffering. The proposed development is supported by city plans and policies, and it will not be incompatible with adjacent development. It complies with the base zoning standards, the general design standards, the standards for design review, and those for a planned development. So such staff is recommending finds that the proposal meets the applicable design review and planned development standards, and recommends the Planning Commission approve both requests subject to the following conditions. The final approval of any site signage, lighting, landscaping, street trees will be verified during the building permit review, and a condominium plat must be finalized and recorded for this development. They have submitted that application, but that's a staff level review. I can answer any questions you might have.
Okay, thanks, David. Commissioners, any questions for staff at this time? So I'm looking at the layout on page 3 of the staff report that shows that T that you talked about. I'm just trying to get a sense of like what's the distance between the units. Is it so when you have the parking, is there any sort of a little driveway, or is the garage right up to the road, the access drive?
I believe it is right up to, but I'll let the applicant address that more specifically.
I was just trying to see if I could, sometimes when I enlarge the fine print of the how the distance doesn't come into focus. So what is the width of those building access drives?
Let me see if I can see it on an enlarged plan. I do understand your concern that.
Oh, here it's below, but I can't read it. 20 something something. TYP. I can't make it out.
Okay, I stopped sharing so I can enlarge my screen without, it's about 24 feet.
24 feet. Okay, thank you. Any other questions for staff? Okay. Let's go to the applicant, Jared Hall. Has he been moved into the, yeah, there he is. All right, Mr. Hall, are you there?
Yeah, I should be here.
Okay, do you do you need screen sharing privileges?
I think David
Presentation?
did a wonderful presentation, so I probably don't need to reiterate the things he's had. I did
Okay,
want to
go
point
ahead.
out that yes, we are providing additional buffering on the sides from what is required to try and help be a good neighbor. And point out that any one of our individual buildings meets the size requirement of the zone. It's just we have multiple of them, so we go over the size requirement of the zone. And then I'm here for any questions you have.
Okay. Commissioners, any questions for the applicant? All right, with that, I will open the public hearing. I don't see any hands raised, but
There are no hands raised at this time, and let me just check the emails. And no emails received.
okay. And all right, with that, I will close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission. If you have questions, discussion, or a motion.
I would note one thing, it was sent to the community councils for the area, and this is, I've had a number of rezones in this area. It actually falls within 600 feet of 4 different community council areas, and we didn't get any comments from either Rose Park, Jordan Meadows, West Point, or Fair Park on this.
No, you didn't. Okay. Anybody ready to make a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, go ahead, Andrew.
Based on the findings and analysis in the staff report, testimony and discussion at the public hearing, I move that the Planning Commission vote to approve the proposed design review and plan development applications for the River's Edge at Redwood Townhomes located at 750 North Redwood Road, files PLN PCM 2021-00606 and PLN PCM 2021-00702 with the conditions of approval listed in the staff report. Specifically, final approval of the details for site signage, lighting, landscaping, and street trees will be delegated to staff for verification during the building permit review. And 2, a condominium plat must be finalized and recorded for this development.
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion by Andra and a second from Mike. Let's go ahead and take a vote. Start with Maureen.
Yes.
Okay, John.
Yes.
Andreas.
I will vote yes. Thank you.
All right, Amy.
Yes.
Brenda. Oh, I'm not hearing you, Brenda. Have we lost you? Looks like we will come back and see if her video comes back up. Mike.
There's Brenda.
Yes.
There you are, Brenda. Yes, your vote?
I'm sorry. Yes.
Okay.
I've been, yeah.
No problem. Andra.
Yes.
Okay, with that, the motion passes unanimously and you are good to go, Jared. All right, next up on our agenda is a zoning map amendment at approximately 1330 South, 700 West. It is case number PLN PCM 2021-00257, and the planner is Eric on this one tonight.
Hi, good evening, commissioners. Nice to be with you. And so this is a zoning map amendment request. And let me, share here. Okay, did that pull up all right?
No, I don't see anything. Here it's coming.
Right.
I still don't see anything. There we go.
There.
You're up and
Okay.
running.
Thank you. Okay, so yeah, this is a request to rezone just a single parcel at that is currently zoned R1 7000, and it includes the seldom used or seldom seen transitional overlay, but they're requesting that that would remain in place. So you can see the property here outlined in yellow with the transitional overlay with the black dash lines. It's just under 0.8 acres. There's currently a single family home on it and a large workshop to the rear property. There's no specific proposal for the redevelopment of the property at this point, but the intent is that it would be redeveloped for future either multifamily or mixed use development. And staff is recommending the Planning Commission forward a positive recommendation to the City Council. So taking a look at the vicinity just to kind of give a little better feel. So this is a subject property here off 700 West with the large Napa Auto across the street. You can see there's to the north is kind of the single family neighborhood that's fairly well established. And then to the south is largely light industrial, a lot of outdoor storage and whatnot. And then there is some PL land to the rear of the property. So this is in the top left hand corner is the subject property with the single family home and the storage sheds to the rear. And then circling around looking kind of northwest, this is one of the single family homes to the northwest, the Napa Auto across the street. And then this is taken from the other street looking at the side of the property, but one of the light industrial with the parking lot there that's quite well kept. So in looking at this, there's a number of considerations to examine. First is, of course, the master plan for the area. It falls under the West Side Master Plan. And really, there's quite a few statements that have been included in your staff report, specifically about the future vision for the 700 West corridor to gradually diversify and add more options for commercial and multifamily residential. And although some of that can be accomplished with the transitional overlay, it doesn't meet the full intent as written in that master plan. So this rezone would help realize the vision in the master plan further. And then looking through Plan Salt Lake, there are numerous initiatives that this would help implement in the areas of neighborhoods, growth, housing, transportation, and mobility, air quality, and economy. Those are explained further in your staff report, but essentially by kind of providing a better buffer and transition, and it would help stabilize the existing residential areas, increase housing, and also, you know, be a more appropriate transition to the light manufacturing to the south. The neighborhood is convenient to mass transit. Of course, there's employment opportunities and there's quite a few neighborhood amenities. So it is supported very well by the master plans of the city. Some additional considerations would be to consider that buffer. You know, would the new CB zone be an appropriate buffer? So it does, the CB zone has a lot of compatibility with the R1 7000. So for example, you know, R1 7000 has a 28-foot height limit and the CB zone has a 30-foot. Of course, R1 7000 on one side has a 7-foot buffer, and this would include a 7-foot landscape buffer adjacent to residential. So in that sense, it would help protect that neighborhood. And then, of course, it would introduce uses that are more compatible with the single-family residential. You know, the CB zone doesn't allow for like light manufacturing and the outdoor storage and that can have impact on the single-family residential. So staff does feel it's an appropriate buffer. that transitional overlay, I kind of did an outline in your staff report, but just because it's seldom used, it does have provisions. The biggest thing is it lists some additional uses and allows them to be approved under a modified conditional use process that kind of incorporates a few more standards and checks for nuisances a little bit more. But the biggest problem is it does still allow for that light manufacturing, and it does not allow housing. So in and of itself, it's maybe not the best transition to the single family residential. And then also, because the CB zone allows for uses that are non-residential, the applicant has had to submit a housing loss mitigation plan, and that has been reviewed and approved. However, they still do need to select officially, if the house is to be torn down at some point, they would need to choose one of the options for replacement housing. That would likely just be under a development agreement. That will need to be in place prior to the public hearing from City Council. But I just wanted to make you aware that that is in the works, and that would be an acceptable term under the ordinance. So yeah, I won't read these, but of course we have our standards for zoning map amendments, and this seems to fall within all of those and accomplish each of those goals. And so again, staff is recommending that the Planning Commission forward a recommendation of approval to the City Council with the condition that the property owner enters into an agreement to construct at least one replacement dwelling unit in accordance with the options for housing mitigation loss.
Okay,
If there
thanks,
are any
Eric.
questions, I'd be happy to take them now.
I have a quick question on your land use comparison.
Sure.
I mean, I made up what I think the C and the P means, but I want you to tell me, because I couldn't find a key to really know what you meant.
Okay.
So confirm or deny what I think.
Okay.
So what does the P mean and what does the C mean in your land use comparison table?
Yeah, so if it's whether it's conditional or permitted under that zone.
Ah, I didn't think that meant permitted. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So the transitional overlay introduces a number of other land uses that become conditional. And so
Yeah, and you brought that up, like they might not be the best transition to the residential on the one side.
Right.
But they're all conditional uses, but conditional uses we don't get to really say no to them. We'd have to
Right.
be able to modify whatever type of impact they would make.
Right.
So
And
I think
transitional overlay does add a few additional standards. That's why I kind of call that a modified conditional use process. So it does do a better job and implements a few additional tools to mitigate those type of uses. But I think it's a step, but it's not all the way there.
Okay. Why are we going to leave this transitional overlay zone, considering I've never seen this before? It's really, there's not many properties that fall in this. Why do we want to leave it? Especially if it allows some uses that probably aren't what we want to see as a good transition buffer to those residential unit buildings next door.
The applicants can speak to that a little bit as well, but it seems to, in my conversations with them, that it does open up a few more options. And if the market is not there and not looking favorable for multifamily or for something like that, it does give a few more options. And again, they are good. The additional standards are good. They're just not as good as would be under the CB zone.
Okay, so we need to really look at what those additional options are and see if we feel like they're appropriate. Okay. Any other questions from the commissioners to staff? All right. Let me open up this document. Is the applicant here? It is Marco and Melinda Geronimo. Here.
There we go.
Hello, are you look
Hello.
like you're muted. Are you here?
Yes. Can you guys hear us?
There we are. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Do you have a presentation that you need to share the screen with, or were you just going to give a
No.
verbal?
Yeah. No.
Okay.
We don't. I think what Eric already presented is
Okay.
good.
If you would just state both of your names for the record so that we know it was pronounced correctly, then the floor is yours.
Sure. My name is Marco Geronimo, and this is my wife, Melinda.
Hello.
So we are the ones that are trying to get permission for this rezoning. I think what Eric already presented, it's plenty good. Yeah. So we do appreciate your time. All we can say is that we've been in this neighborhood for quite a while, so we're very vested as well to see it progressing and improving. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, any questions for the Geronimos? So I have kind of a follow-up question to what I was just talking to Eric about. And Eric, you might have to pipe in on this. So if you chose to use the uses that are allowed in the transitional overlay, but are not allowed in the CV zone, none of those have a housing component. And yet you will be having to at least replace one dwelling unit. Eric, is there a requirement for location by which that is replaced in the vicinity, or is it just anywhere in the city on other property they may own?
So there are several options for housing loss mitigation. I don't have them in front of me right at the moment.
So maybe you
but
can look
they,
at that
they can, for example, they can even do a monetary amount for the cost of that unit, or it could be put in another place. I do know those two. I don't have the specifics right in front of me though.
Okay.
So just we are talking about replacing the unit as we develop this area, correct? So our intent is basically to build dwelling apartments, mix business over there, but mainly just apartments. So that should mitigate losing that unit over there.
Yeah. So I guess I'm just curious why you want to keep this transitional overlay, and why you're not requesting to just eradicate that and rezone it completely to CV.
When we had talked about that with Eric, there were some differences in setbacks and stuff, that some smaller details that we thought, and since the zoning amendment didn't require us to let go of the transitional overlay, that there didn't seem to be a reason to do so for the plans that we had, and just allowed for those additional options with some setbacks if we needed to utilize those.
Okay. I think I'm a little, I don't want to say totally concerned, but I'm a little concerned about those uses that are allowed in the transitional overlay not really being something we would want to see happen here. That it would be cleaner if we did away with that and you had the options to do whatever you wanted. But I'm going to think that through as we go forward. Anyway, I just was curious as like why your reasoning is why you wanted to keep it. So that's helpful. Commissioners, any other questions for the applicant at this time? Okay, I'm going to have you guys stick around. We'll do the public comment portion and then come back to the commission. And if we have any further questions, we'll ask you.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
I do not see any hands, Kelsey.
That's correct. There are no hands up at this
And
time.
this had no public comments in the staff report. Did we get any emails, John?
There were no emails.
Okay, then I will close the public comment period and bring it back to the commissioners for a discussion, further questions, or a motion.
I can make a motion.
Go ahead, Mike.
Based on the findings listed in the staff report, the information presented, and the input received during the public hearing, I move that the Planning Commission forward a recommendation to the City Council to approve the request to rezone the property located at 1330 South, 700 West from R1 7000 to CB for petition PLN PCM 2021-00257, subject to complying with the following condition listed in the staff report. 1, the property owner enters into an agreement to construct at least one replacement dwelling unit in accordance with the Salt Lake City Code section 18.97.030.A, options for mitigating residential loss replacement housing.
Second?
Was that Andra?
Mhm.
Okay.
This is Amy, can I make an amendment that we remove the transitional overlay?
You can make that suggestion. I have a motion from Mike and a second from Andra. Amy's making a suggestion for a friendly amendment. I'm taking it to Mike, and that's his choice.
And commissioners, if I could, I do know that some of these uses are kind of light industrial uses, but I think if you look in the context of 7th West, I think that although they may not be appropriate in most areas, that you may want to just kind of take a look at it and kind of make a decision as to whether or not you think they're appropriate. I'm going to defer to staff's judgment and go ahead with the original motion.
Okay, so that friendly amendment was rejected. Amy, you would have, well, depending on how this goes, then you could make an alternate motion. Well, let's go ahead and take a vote. Maureen?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Brenda?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Andra?
Yes.
And Andreas?
I will vote yes.
Okay, that motion passes unanimously. You are good to go. And thank you for coming tonight. Let's move on to our last agenda item.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. That is the Airport Influence Overlay Zone Map Amendment. It's case number PLN PCM 2021-00915. And I don't know who is presenting this. It's not written on my cheat sheet.
I'm presenting. It's Chrissy Gilmore.
All right, Chrissy.
So you should be able to see my screen.
Yep, you're good.
So this is a request initiated by the mayor to amend the zoning map to remove the property at 2333 West North Temple from the Airport Flight Path Protection Influence Zone A. The property is currently occupied by a commercial building, which is the Airport Inn. The result would allow the Airport Inn to accommodate stays greater than 30 days as transitional housing. The zoning code does not include a land use that directly matches this kind of supportive housing. Under city code, rooms that are available for rental or lease for periods of less than 30 days are considered a hotel or a motel, while dwellings that are rented for periods of longer than 1 month generally fall into the residential land use category and would be prohibited in the Airport Influence Zone A. So I've included this map that shows the boundary of the current Airport Influence Zone A, and then the proposed boundary, which is essentially just that one parcel, the Airport Inn. Staff is recommending the commission forward a positive recommendation to the City Council regarding this request. So as far as key considerations, if removed from the influence zone, the property would still be subject to all the zoning regulations of the base zone, which is the TSA Mixed Employment Center core zone. The primary impact is that the uses currently prohibited under the overlay zone would now be allowed if they are permitted or conditional uses in the TSA zone. These include multifamily residential, and some institutional uses that are prohibited in the overlay zone. I've bolded the main impacts on the screen. So it's these residential uses. Single family detached is not permitted in the TSA zone. And then institutional uses such as schools, hospitals, churches, and rest homes would be allowed with this amendment. It would also remove sound attenuation requirements, which is a suggested condition of approval to add that in as a requirement for a development agreement. And then as far as the compatibility of neighboring properties, the surrounding properties you can see to the north is the airport, and then to the the west and south is primarily parking, like car rental parking and the parking spot. And then to the east is a large corporate building. So as far as standards of review, when analyzing the project, we consider the standards of review. Those are consistency with city plans and policies, supporting purpose of the zoning ordinance, extent of impact on adjacent properties, consistency with any overlay districts, and adequacy of public facilities and services. Staff believes that the proposal meets those standards. The full analysis is in attachment E of your staff report. And then these are photos of the site. So this top left photo is the existing airport inn that is currently being remodeled to accommodate this transitional housing, if approved. Then the top right is the property to the west, which is a car rental shop. And then below is the bottom left is the headquarter office building. And then across the street is airport, which you can see. So the recommendations. So as far as public engagement, staff received 2 comments from the same individual concerned about the proposal. The proposal is technically in 2 community council boundaries. I did not hear from either one of them, but the West Point Community Council, which is outside of the boundaries, did submit comments with general concern that this would set a precedence for similar rezones. And those comments are available in your staff report. But in conclusion, staff is recommending that the Planning Commission forward a positive recommendation to the City Council with the one condition that I mentioned. A development agreement shall be recorded on the property that requires any new development or substantial remodel of existing development to be constructed with air circulation systems of at least 30 dBs of sound attenuation in sleeping areas and at least 25 dBs of sound attenuation elsewhere to help mitigate that impact of longer-term residential stays. And with that, concludes my presentation. I'm available for any questions.
Okay, thank you. Chrissy, any questions from commissioners at this point?
Yeah, Chrissy, so what this does is allow, what you're actually doing is allowing a longer term residential use, which would normally not be allowed at all, but you still are requiring the sound attenuation.
Yeah, that's correct. So with the condition of approval, it would still require that sound protection, but it would just allow stays longer than 30 days.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay. Since this originated from the mayor's office, there is no applicant. I saw somebody, well, no, never mind. All right. So with that, if there's any further discussion, have it now. Otherwise, I'm open for a motion.
Commissioner Barry, you still need to open the public comment.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I did. I forgot that. We will open the public comment period, and I don't see any hand raised of who is.
That's correct. There are no hands up at this time, and no emails received.
Okay, thank you for the reminder. With that, I'll close the public comment period, bring it back, and if anybody's ready to make a motion.
I can make a motion.
Thank you, Brenda.
Okay. Based on the information in the staff report, the information presented, and the input received during the public hearing, I move that the Planning Commission forward a positive recommendation to the City Council to approve PLN PCM 2021-00915 with the following condition: a development agreement shall be recorded on the property that requires any new development or substantial remodel of existing development to be constructed with air circulation systems of at least 30 decibels of sound attenuation in sleeping areas and at least 25 decibels of sound attenuation elsewhere.
Second?
Okay, I have a motion from Brenda and a second from Andra. Let's go ahead and take a vote. Maureen?
Yes.
Andreas?
I will vote yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
Andra?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
And Brenda?
Yes.
Okay, that motion passes unanimously. And with that, concludes our business tonight. I want to thank everybody again for participating in this extra meeting, and know that we will see you on January 12th. And with that, happy holidays and happy New Year. This meeting is adjourned.
Happy holidays to
Thank you,
everybody.
everybody. Yeah, Merry Christmas.